Hi, my name is Molly O'Mara, and my presentation is on business contingency programs in response to hazards, natural disasters, etc., specifically in the private sector. So, business contingency programs are essentially just an order of steps and procedures that companies have in place to deal with a variety of different issues, and there's 5 steps to these. The first step to a company creating a business contingency program is to assess all potential risks that they can think of and then rank them in order of severity and likelihood. So, for example, a company located in Boston, Massachusetts may devote more time and resources into preparing for how to deal with a blizzard than a company located in Miami, things like that. The next thing companies do is create a comprehensive report for what they deem to be the most likely or the most severe, and these reports are called BIA reports, and they just dive a little bit deeper into exactly how different departments of the company would deal with these various hazards. The next step is to use these BIA reports to create specific plans, again, for each department to know exactly what to do so that if disaster were to occur, they aren't looking around confused. They all have a role and they can confidently fulfill it. The next step is to realize the cost. The difference between private sector and public sector, one of the major ones, is that in private sectors, they're funding their own rehabilitation. So the board, insurance companies, things like that are solely responsible for getting the company back on their feet. So in order to do so, they need to decide how much it's worth to spend on different areas for different disasters because they have a limited amount of funds. And then the final step is to test these plans. Without testing, they would never know if it would work. So if an actual disaster were to occur, it might fail, and that would obviously be bad. So they test them, run drills, trainings for employees, things like that to ensure things go as smoothly as possible. The major goals of business contingency programs, specifically in the private sector, the first one is decreased recovery times. This, obviously, they want to get back on their feet as quickly as possible, so they work on being as efficient as they can with their plans so that they can resume normal operations quickly. Next, they're looking for ways to lower costs. Like I said earlier, they don't have the same government funds to help support them to get back on their feet, so they're trying to rehabilitate but in a costly manner or a cost conscious manner. And then lastly, they're trying to increase morale. If the employees have lost faith, they're not going to put the same passion and energy into helping restore the company. So they need to all work together, and every aspect of the company needs to play their role accordingly in order to recover. The major differences between the private and public sector when it comes to these business contingency programs, there's 3 of them. The first one is their main goals. In the private sector, they're focused on maintaining profits along with their image. They don't want consumers to lose faith in the brand, so they're trying to make themselves look as good as they can. Whereas in the public sector, they're more focused on public safety and social stability, just ensuring that society can function as usual. In the private sector, these recovery operations are internally regulated through auditors, board of governors, things like that, whereas in the public sector, they're regulated by the government. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, in the private sector, the rehabilitation is funded by revenue and insurance, whereas in the public sector, it's funded through government funding, which is from taxpayers. A good example of a company in the private sector is JP Morgan. They have all of this data listed plainly on their website to show what they would do if a disaster were to occur. And these things include having backup computer systems so they can do remote work if things like a pandemic or a blizzard were to occur and they weren't allowed to get back into the office. And then they do annual testing to ensure that everything's up to date, and they keep data, applications, things like that off-site, so if there was a fire in the immediate vicinity, they don't lose everything. All of those things are still available elsewhere, things like that. And they have a very thorough plan laid out on their website for everybody to see, which obviously bodes well for how they'd recover if there was an incident. So yeah, that is all. It was very interesting to learn about business contingency programs and how they are different in the private and public. And yeah.